During the Olympics, it seems like every broadcast, every website, every news article includes this: the medal table. It's even on the official Olympics website, but this isn't the only way to measure Olympic success. In fact, I think there are much better ways to decide who really won in Paris. Okay, let's start with the basics. Here's a ranking by total medals won. The United States and China top the list, which is pretty typical, but the host nation France claimed fourth and overall had its best showing in 124 years. Much of the world and the IOC itself tend to rank countries by gold medals won. Here, the US and China are tied, and Japan jumps into third. A way of balancing golds and total medals is by using a point system. I like to use the New York Times formula of 4 to 2 to 1. It doesn't change things too much, but France does climb up to third here. Okay, so we've done the straightforward rankings, but can we do better? All the countries near the top so far have been pretty big. China is drawing its athletes from a population that is now over 1.4 billion people, and the smallest nation to crack the top 10 so far is the Netherlands with over 17 million people. So what if we divided the medals won by a country's population to find medals per capita, or in this case, medals per million people? Now things are looking much different. This year, the list is dominated by 3 small Caribbean nations who won all their medals in track and field. Grenada, which has about 125,000 people, notched 2 bronze medals to produce a medals per million score of over 15. St. Lucia earned 2 medals from a population of 180,000, and Dominica earned 1 medal from a population of just 72,000. New Zealand, Bahrain, and Jamaica also do well by this standard, while Australia and the Netherlands have the distinction of ranking in the top 10 in both the simple medal tally rankings and in the per capita rankings. Move to medal points per capita, and things remain largely the same, though Thea Lafon's triple jump gold, Dominica's first ever Olympic medal, single-handedly pushes the country into first place. Okay, these per capita rankings are a great way to celebrate small nations, but it still isn't a great way to fairly judge Olympic success overall, because while small nations have very little chance in a simple medal tally, larger nations have 0 chance in a per capita standard. For example, in order to match the medal points score Dominica posted here, the United States would have to win more than 18,000 gold medals in a single Olympics. China would have to win over 77,000. This problem of balancing the performances of large and small nations bothered me for a really long time when I watched the Olympics. My attempt at solving this problem became the Impressiveness-O-Meter. It's basically a probability formula similar to what you might use to figure out how often the best roll from a small number of dice will beat the best roll from a large number of dice. Given only population and medal data, it tries to calculate how likely, or unlikely, a nation's Olympics performance is. The more unlikely your success, the higher your score. So, by this measure, Australia wins, while France is in second, again having its best showing in more than a century. For Great Britain, you might actually call 4th place a disappointment because in the last 3 Summer Games, it ranked first by this measure. The United States is the largest nation in the top 10 here, and Hungary is the smallest. Now, we've been measuring nations against each other so far, but what about measuring them against themselves? Let's compare each country's medal total to the average of its performances over the past 5 Summer Games. This measure is a little clunky because 6 countries who won medals this year had won 0 over the last 5 games, which basically means they get an infinite score here. 4 of these nations, St. Lucia, Dominica, Albania, and Cape Verde, won their first ever Olympic medals this year. Looking down the list a bit, a lot of nations actually outperformed their past averages, including the US and China. Notable countries that underperformed were Germany and Jamaica. Another thing complicating results is that different sports give out wildly different amounts of hardware. Swimming, for instance, has 37 medal events, while water polo has only 2. So let's take the medal points totals from earlier and give each sport category an equal weight. Exactly how you organize these categories is subjective. I went with Wikipedia's system. By this measure, China jumps into the lead, but I think the most interesting way to break this down is to look at it sport by sport. It's fun to see how many nations who tend to receive less Olympic notoriety can stand out in a sport-by-sport basis. South Korea, for example, absolutely dominated the archery category, winning all 5 gold medals. It's a small looking wedge here, but Kenya won 11 distance running medals in the track and field category. Uzbekistan won 5 boxing golds. New Zealand won 4 canoeing golds. Germany 4 equestrian golds. The Netherlands swept the field hockey golds. Handball was led by Denmark. Japan led in skateboarding. Poland won multiple medals in sport climbing. I could go on. Resize some of these sports according to the number of medals they give out, and you can see the very different paths charted by China and the US to reach the top of the medal tally. China tends to dominate sports with only a few medals available, like diving and table tennis, while the US tends to win medals in sports that have a ton of events, like swimming and track and field. This isn't the only way we can reweight the medal count. Like, surely team events should count more, right? They require more athletes, there are more physical medals handed out at the end, and yet a team victory still only counts as 1 on the standard medal table. So let's go back to the simple medal tally from the beginning and make one change, increasing the weight of team medals according to the number of athletes the team puts on the field at once. So a rugby sevens medal is now worth 7, a tandem diving medal is worth 2, a track relay is now worth 4, you get the idea. By this standard, the United States jumps back into the lead. The rest of the list is more or less unchanged, but the really interesting thing to do here is to take these numbers and then divide them by the number of athletes each nation sent to the games to get a medals per athlete score. And this, I think, is one of the most interesting charts we've come up with. 2 of the 3 smallest nations to medal and 2 of the 3 largest nations to medal all appear in the top 10. There's real parity here. North Korea is tied for the lead. 8 of the 16 athletes it sent to the games went home with medals. And by winning 2 sprinting medals, Julian Alfred single-handedly puts St. Lucia in a tie for the lead. Botswana's 2 track medals, including a relay from just 11 athletes, puts them in 3rd. And Kyrgyzstan won 6 medals with just 16 athletes. Grenada sent just 6 athletes and won 2 medals. And among all these small nations, it's amazing that both the US and China won enough medals to get into the top 10 here, despite sending nearly 1,000 athletes combined. All right, so far we've looked at 10 metrics that only factor in medals, population, and athletes, but of course there are a lot of other factors that we could include. For instance, what about comparing a nation's impressiveness score versus its average temperature? Are nations in colder climates at a disadvantage? If so, you can credit Canada and the Nordic countries of Norway and Sweden as doing pretty well. What about distance from the equator? This kind of yields similar results, but I think France, the Netherlands, and Great Britain all look pretty good here. The biggest factor we haven't talked about yet is money. So here is a chart that compares total medals won to national GDP. Other than the US and China, this is pretty clumpy, so let's put it on a logarithmic scale. There we go. You want to be up and to the left to stand out here, so nations like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Australia, and Great Britain are looking pretty good. France is also hiding under there in a good position. Another way to visualize the same data is to compare medals per capita versus GDP per capita. Grenada, Dominica, and St. Lucia once again stand out, but if we zoom in down here, we can see that Cape Verde, Georgia, and Jamaica are separating themselves along with nations like Bahrain and New Zealand. So, there you go. 14 ways to measure who really won the Olympics. But before we end, I want to go back to this graph for a second. Total medals compared to GDP. Because if there's a single image that illustrates why we should be skeptical of standard medal tables, it's this graph, with the US and China sticking way out. These are the 2 largest economies in the world, by far, and they are consistently the top 2 medal winners in the Summer Olympics. The Olympics sometimes becomes an arena for world superpowers to try to flex on each other. Somehow medal tallies become a proxy measure for economic health or international influence. And I worry that relying on one kind of medal table, the standard medal table, kind of encourages this behavior, because if there's one medal table, then there's one winner, and if there's one winner, then the Olympics becomes a zero-sum game. But it's not a zero-sum game. The Olympics is about diversity of achievement. There are as many ways to achieve Olympic success as there are Olympic athletes. If you want to truly quantify all that, you're going to need a lot of different measuring sticks. Maybe 14 is a start.